Next, on Currents News, pilgrimages are coming back online, how the faithful are starting to nourish their faith with trips to the Holy Land and beyond. Plus, U.S. bishops are praising President Biden's move to raise the refugee cap after backlash that he'd gone back on a promise to help desperate migrants.
At one Brooklyn school, no kid will ever go without a friend again, thanks to this bench honoring a former student's legacy. I'm Jessica Easthope, and Gianna's story is ahead.
And soon to be saints, Pope Francis announces he will canonize 7 blesseds as models of holiness. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. It's an exciting return to normalcy after being shut down during the pandemic. Pilgrimages are making a comeback. Currents News' Emily Druvy traveled out to Long Island to visit the offices of Peter's Way Tours. They have trips scheduled starting in July.
Pilgrimage brochures are printed and out, making a comeback after a year of being shut down.
We have to celebrate.
For 38 years, Peter Bahu has owned Peter's Way Tours. They specialize in pilgrimages, working with Catholics across the country, including the Diocese of Brooklyn. The pandemic forced them to cancel all of their trips starting in March of last year, 200 groups. Now they're back. 20 pilgrimage groups will head out between July and the end of this year.
So we want to make sure people are comfortable and traveling with confidence.
In terms of safety, Peter and his team have been keeping track of travel requirements as they change. There's precautions in place like PCR testing and limiting the amount of people allowed on the buses. Peter is so confident in the safety, he's going himself this summer.
Not only business, for us it's a ministry. It gives us energy to see those pilgrimages, traveling, coming back so happy.
The Diocese of Brooklyn's first pilgrimage is scheduled starting May 17th of 2022 to the Oberammergau Passion Play. It's being led by Auxiliary Bishop Emeritus Octavio Cisneros.
Hallelujah!
The Passion Play dates back to 1633 and was started because of a pandemic.
The people prayed to God that if they were spared the bubonic plague, every 10 years they would have a celebration of the Passion of our Lord.
This is a rescheduled trip. The original was set for May of 2020, of course canceled because of COVID. 11 people are signed up so far. A trip Bishop Cisneros says will bring those on it closer to their faith.
We go with a spiritual purpose, to touch base with the faith of other people, to see the history of our faith lived out in others.
A pilgrimage intended to deepen one's Catholic faith, now one step closer to a return to normal. In Melville, Long Island, Emily Druvy, Currents News.
Many here in the Diocese of Brooklyn are anxious to pack their bags. Coming up, we'll speak with Father Gerard Sauer, the diocesan director of pilgrimages and pastor of St. Patrick's in Bay Ridge. He's got big plans for future trips. We'll ask him about it. That's still ahead in this newscast. President Biden is raising the country's refugee admissions cap to 62,500. The move comes after the White House faced criticism last month for sticking to the previous administration's 15,000 person limit. The president says he aims to increase the cap to 125,000 by 2022, but admits it will be hard to hit. U.S. bishops applauded Biden's decision, releasing this statement. This increase was a crucial step toward rebuilding the crippled refugee admissions program. We view this number as a stepping stone toward the administration's stated goal of 125,000 admissions, a figure more consistent with our values and capabilities as a nation. Tragedy in Mexico's capital overnight as an elevated subway train crashed to the ground below. The collapse killed at least 23 people, including children, and injured almost 80 more. Dozens are still hospitalized as rescuers continue to scour through mangled metal and debris. Officials are calling it the worst accident in the subway system's history. The overpass is one of the newest stretches of track in a subway system fraught with problems and made worse by a powerful earthquake that devastated parts of Mexico City in 2017. Engineering experts have been called called to the scene to help determine the cause of the collapse. President Obrador is promising an investigation as church leaders in Mexico are praying for the victims and their families. Bishop Andres Vargas Peña, whose diocese serves 3 southern boroughs in Mexico City, announced each priest in the diocese would celebrate Mass 3 times in memory of the deceased. He's also calling on diocesan priests and hospitals in the affected area to provide spiritual support. New coronavirus cases and deaths have dropped significantly since the winter surge. Experts say that's because Americans are getting vaccinated. But the rate of vaccination is slowing around the country, and that's causing concern. Nadia Romero reports from Washington.
New COVID-19 cases and deaths in the U.S. down. States hit hardest early in the pandemic, eager to open up.
We can do this safely because our numbers have trended decisively in the right direction.
The number now about 1/5 of what they were in January. Many health experts crediting climbing vaccinations.
They remove the ability of this virus to cause serious disease, hospitalization, and death. They allow you to reclaim your pre-pandemic life.
The Biden administration setting a goal of at least partially vaccinating 70% of adult Americans by July 4th.
Get vaccinated. In 2 months, let's celebrate our independence as a nation and our independence from this virus.
Vaccine supply now outpacing demand in much of the country, causing some mass vaccination sites to close. Health officials ramping up efforts to reach those hesitant to get the shot and those who didn't have access before.
The important thing with public health and combating an epidemic is you have to meet the people where they are.
Another key to getting us closer to normal life, inoculating children. The Food and Drug Administration is planning to authorize the Pfizer vaccine for children aged 12 to 15 early next week, according to a federal official.
If you can expand to 12 and 15-year-olds, that's more people vaccinated. That's less opportunity the virus has to infect people.
Pfizer also announcing Tuesday it will seek emergency use authorization for its vaccine in children aged 2 to 11 in September. In Washington, Nadia Romero, Currents News.
Police are looking for a suspect in the latest anti-Asian attack here in New York City. The incident happening to a 31-year-old woman in Hell's Kitchen late Sunday night. The attacker approaches her, screams at her to take her mask off, and then hits the woman in the head several times. The NYPD's Hate Crimes Task Force is investigating the incident. The trial in the murder of George Floyd is over, but questions are starting to circulate about one of the jurors. A photo of Brandon Mitchell, known as juror number 52, attending a march in D.C. last year for the anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, is making the rounds online. The photo shows him wearing a shirt that said, "Get your knee off our necks." But before being selected, Mitchell said he never attended protests over police brutality. Now the defense has the right to ask the judge to question the juror and decide if Chauvin's guilty verdict will stand. New York's finest say goodbye to one of their fallen officers, Anastasio Sakos. The NYPD paying tribute to the officer with a police motorcade escort from Queens to Long Island. There, they joined thousands of officers saluting Sakos outside St. Paraskevi Greek Orthodox Church for the funeral. Among them, Commissioner Dermot Shea, who posthumously promoted Sakos to detective during the ceremony. Sakos was struck and killed in the line of duty in Queens last week. Currents News spoke with NYPD Deputy Chief Chaplain Monsignor David Cassato about the devastating loss.
Moments like this, the police department of the city, the greatest police department in the world, needs the consolation of faith. And my prayer is that today he is with God in heaven.
Sakos leaves behind a wife and 2 small children. Parents of kids in New York City public schools got to look at next year's school calendar, and the Columbus Day holiday is no longer on it. The students will still get the October day off. It'll just be in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, not the Italian explorer. Christopher Columbus statues across the country have been the target of vandalism for months by people who believe they are symbols of oppression. Others say Columbus is a source of pride for Italian Americans. Continuing our coverage of Teachers Appreciation Week, Monsignor Cassato, who is also the vicar of Catholic schools in the Brooklyn Diocese, is giving his thanks to Catholic school educators with a little help.
God bless you, teachers. But you know what? The kids say it even better than I. Let's listen to those kids say thank you.
Thank you, teachers!
The Diocese of Brooklyn currently has about 1,500 teachers in 69 schools and academies across Brooklyn and Queens. Now to a story about a courageous young girl, 12-year-old Gianna Gambino, whose life was tragically cut short, but not before she left behind a legacy of friendship, kindness, and faith. Her family and former school have now made a place where people can come to live like Gianna. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story from Marine Park.
Gianna Gambino's 3 younger siblings can't name their happiest memory with their sister. There are just too many.
I'm not really sure because she had a lot of great memories, but I don't really know.
Yellow was her favorite color.
But one thing they're sure of is she was the perfect role model. Gianna lost her battle with osteosarcoma on February 19th, just 2 months shy of her 13th birthday. The Gambinos' lives will never be the same. But through their loss, they want to inspire people to live like Gianna.
Gianna definitely gave everybody a reason to smile. She definitely made people see the positive side of everything. So she really uplifted everyone.
Now her family and her elementary school, PS 222 in Marine Park, are making sure her legacy lives on. Sitting in her old schoolyard is Gianna's buddy bench. She was known for being a friend to everyone. And now her name serves as a reminder to be kind. And the bench, a refuge for any kid who's lonely or left out.
They needed a new friend and they would come here and sit, live like Gianna, be kind, do something, just make somebody feel good.
Anybody can do a blessing.
Even in her darkest days, Gianna's life was full of faith. Father Thomas Doyle, the pastor of Good Shepherd Church, where the Gambinos are parishioners and Gianna sang in the children's choir, says her impact on his life is forever.
In 37 years of being a priest, this was the hard one, because you saw how positive she was. Here you have a 12-year-old, who kind of told us how to live.
Now with her buddy bench, Gianna's memory will be one of inclusion. Her father, Carl, says it represents everything she was.
Just living basically like Jesus, It's and that's the effect that it has to have peace in the world.
So the next time the bench reminds someone to share a smile, warm a heart, or be a friend, that's the Gianna effect. In Marine Park, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Schools across New York City are participating in the Live Like Gianna movement, doing random acts of kindness like the ones she inspired. There's a lot more news headed your way. Catholics in the diocese are already booking pilgrimages for the summer. Father Gerard Sauer, diocesan director of pilgrimages, is here with more on how you can take part. Plus, India passes an unwanted milestone as the country tops 20 million cases of COVID-19. And 7 men and women clear the final hurdle for sainthood, but their canonization ceremony is stalled because of COVID. All that and more coming up after the break.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Getting back to our top story now, pilgrimages here in the Diocese of Brooklyn are making a comeback, and there's no one better to talk about it than Father Gerard Sauer, diocesan director of pilgrimages and pastor of St. Patrick's in Bay Ridge. He joins us now. And Father, people haven't been allowed into Europe for over a year. Have you been seeing an increased interest in the pilgrimages now, or are people still hesitant to travel?
Well, I think people are still definitely hesitant to travel, but we had 3 pilgrimages on the horizon before the pandemic, and that was to Hungary for the Eucharistic Congress, to the World Meeting of Families in Rome, and to Oberammergau, the Passion Play. So I think anyone who had a pilgrimage pre-scheduled, they're anxious to travel. And now I think that people are getting more comfortable with people being vaccinated. The inquiries certainly have been stepping up a little bit.
Oh, that's good to hear. I hear you're already planning some trips. What's on the agenda and what can people expect?
Well, the first pilgrimage we have on tap, and hopefully will continue, Brooklyn has had an unbroken chain of pilgrimages to the National Shrine in Washington, D.C. So hopefully in October of 2022, we'll take our pilgrims back to Washington, D.C. In addition to that, we would have the World Meeting of Families next June in Rome. Oberammergau, the Passion Play, which is always in 2010, 2020, This one would be in 2022 because of the pandemic. We would be going back to Oberammergau, Germany, and then World Youth Day in 2023 in Lisbon.
Oh, it sounds so exciting. I've never been on one of these trips. So tell me, how can a pilgrimage help to strengthen your faith?
In many ways. So first of all, going to places like Israel, to the Holy Land, or going to Rome, I mean, just naturally it strengthens your faith because of where you are. But also, it strengthens your faith by seeing some of these holy sites where Jesus walked, where our church got its foundations. To come back from the Holy Land and say, wow, that's what the Mount of the Beatitudes looked like. Or I was up on Mount Tabor where the Transfiguration took place. Or that's the place where my Lord was crucified. So it really puts you in touch with a lot of things that we've learned or we've been steeped in as Christians all our lives.
And now you've been doing this since 2006. How many pilgrimages have you been on, and where do you usually go? Do you have a favorite spot?
I would say they're all unique. They're all special. I think Israel is my favorite. I've been to Israel 10 times.
Wow.
Personally, some on personal retreats, some as a seminarian. But I've led 30 international pilgrimages for the diocese since taking this job in 2006.
You know, it's funny, I was looking at the pictures of your former trips, and it's funny to see everybody crowded, all these big crowds everywhere. Do you think that's going to change a little bit, even though people may be vaccinated by the time you go?
I think life has changed for all of us.
Yeah.
You know, I guess, or I bet one day this will all be in the rearview mirror, like the pandemic in the year 2018, correct? That certainly was in the back mirror when we had the Spanish flu in our own country, right? So eventually things do go in the back mirror, but I think in the distant future or the near future, I think we're going to see more distancing than we have in some of those photos that I sent. But I bet you will be back to normal at some point.
Yeah, we're all praying for that. Father Gerard Sauer, Diocesan Director of Pilgrimages and Pastor of St. Patrick's in Bay Ridge. Happy travels.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Turning now to the COVID crisis in India. The country is experiencing the world's worst coronavirus outbreak, where only 2% of the population is fully vaccinated. One Catholic leader there describes the disastrous situation.
It seems to be, from what we reports we get, Delhi is very bad. So because deaths, lack of oxygen, lack of medicines. Here, the church also has got quite involved in Mumbai in our hospitals and our social work agencies. So we've been able, so it's very bad, but I'm hopeful.
The country's Catholic bishops are inviting all Christians in India to observe a day of prayer and fasting this Friday, May 7th. Even as help pours in from the U.S. and other countries, they are struggling to give basic medical care to those who need it most. Clarissa Ward traveled to India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, to see the crisis unfold firsthand.
A man wails in anguish, but no one is listening. His cry, just one of many, at this hospital in Uttar Pradesh state. Oh, my child, he says. Oh, my God, my baby. Inside the entrance, his son Deepak is fighting for his life. The handful of medical staff working in this ward are stretched thin to breaking point. 32-year-old Kavita says she's been here for 4 days, begging for oxygen that has not come. I'm getting anxious, she says. No one is listening to me here. In the next room, more than 20 patients are packed in tightly. This is what now passes for the intensive care unit. Family members have taken on the role of primary carers, where medical staff are simply unavailable. Those who do work here risk becoming patients themselves. We should be wearing proper PPE, they say, but even the doctors don't have it, so how can we? Just a few hundred yards away, in the same hospital complex, it's a very different picture. Orderly lines of people patiently wait to be vaccinated, following the Prime Minister's announcement that anyone over 18 can be inoculated. A state lawmaker is among 600 people getting their vaccine. The hospital administrator and local journalists eagerly stand by to capture the moment. The situation is not only bad here, we're trying to find solutions, he says. We're increasing the number of beds and we're working tirelessly around the clock. But back in the COVID ward, the impact of those efforts is not yet being felt. India's leaders may promise that everything is being done to end this crisis. But for now, there is no light at the end of the tunnel.
That was Clarissa Ward reporting. The Catholic charity Caritas is asking for your help to fight India's ongoing pandemic surge. They've been one of the main actors battling COVID in the country. To donate, just head to caritas.org/India COVID second wave. And Wednesday on this newscast, Currents News' Emily Druby will explore the reasons behind the surging cases in India and what can be done to curb the numbers. That's Wednesday on Currents News. The Basilica of the Annunciation in Nazareth is taking part in Pope Francis's month-long prayer marathon, leading the rosary for an end to the pandemic. The Basilica marks the spot where the angel Gabriel appeared to the Virgin Mary, and Catholics there are offering the rosary for all expectant women and their unborn babies. The church in Israel is the fourth of 30 Catholic shrines around the world participating in the Pope's initiative. The sainthood causes of 7 blesseds cleared their final hurdle after the Pope authorized their canonization Monday. In the first public consistory since the pandemic began, the pontiff highlighted the exemplary holiness of 4 priests, 2 religious sisters, and 1 layperson. While the date for their canonization has not yet been announced due to the pandemic, once canonized, the holy men and women will be recognized as saints throughout the church. Still to come on Currents News, a Good Samaritan dives off a bridge to save a baby. The details of the daring rescue when we return. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A baby girl is alive tonight thanks to the quick thinking of a nearby Good Samaritan in Maryland. A 5-car collision Sunday afternoon caused the truck the girl was in to dangle over the Route 90 bridge before she was ejected with her car seat to the bay below. That's when a stranger jumped the 25 feet to her rescue into shallow water.
The baby was face down in the water for a short period of time, but because of the unbelievable and heroic actions of this humble hero, he was able to retrieve the child immediately.
Wow, the crash sent 8 people to the hospital. All but the 2-year-old have been released. The baby is in stable condition. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We'd like to end this newscast with a prayer, a Hail Mary from Tuesday's broadcast of the Vatican's Pandemic Prayer Marathon. Hope to see you again next time.
Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne e benedetto il frutto del tuo seno, Gesù.
Santa Maria, Madre di Dio, prega per noi peccatori, adesso e nell'ora della nostra morte. Amen.